Let's be innovative. Let's challenge a norm. Let's raise the bar. Let's be the elite.
Lionheart returns debuting its new championship format. For the first time, Lionheart's best will battle in a multi-class format featuring BMW's all-new M Hybrid V8 and M4 GT3 machines. 55 drivers will face off in the ultimate test in the ultimate driving machine. 18 races at the world's most demanding road courses where traffic takes on a whole new meaning. This year, Lionheart will crown 2 champions, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Buttkicker Sportscar Championship, presented by BMW Performance Driving School, starts now. They say everything is bigger in the Lone Star State. Does that include drama? If so, get strapped in for a wild ride at a track that divides opinions. You either are quick around the 3.4 miles or you hate it. You either can feel the track limits, figure out the flow of traffic, or get blown away in a game of Texas Hold'em. Welcome to Austin and welcome to the Buttkicker Grand Prix of COTA, here live on RaceSpotTV. Delighted to have you cut back here for coverage of the 2023 Buttkicker Sports Car Series. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, delighted once again to be alongside Andrew Kinsella. Don't forget you can follow along with live timing and scoring by heading to RaceSpot.tv/timing. Let's dive straight into our BMW Performance Driving School pre-race show, because boy have I been waiting for this one. A race where just staying within the track limits is a challenge in and of itself, and where drivers very much are going to be looking to try and hit their apexes and, most importantly, stay out of trouble. As we take a look at the next level racing schedule, it's been a really interesting first 4 rounds, but now, Andrew, at the Circuit of the Americas, we let these BMWs let loose once more.
Yes, to say that Circuit of the Americas is divisive within the drivers would be an understatement. As you said right off the top, you either love this circuit or you hate it, and I know you're on the side of love. I'm going to be on the side of hate here today in this commentary booth. Definitely not my favorite racetrack on the service, but at the same time, I mean, look at the schedule that's coming up. It's still a classic American circuit, and then we go to the classic European circuit at the Circuit de la Sarthe in just 2 weeks' time, then followed up rapid fire with Fuji, Mosport, and Monza, 3 really, really quick tracks to go to after the Circuit de la Sarre. So we've got a lot of speed coming up here over the next 4 or 5 races.
And that leads us to the end of the first half of the season. 9 races will be done, 9 left to lead us all the way in towards 2024, when we'll crown our champions, hopefully under the night lights at Daytona. Let's hope the championship not wrapped up a full month earlier, though, at Twin Ring Motegi in the second week of December. Quick look, though, at the BMW Performance Driving School LMDH standings, because of course with 2 classes of competition we split the championship standings up just a little bit as well. It is Austin Young that still leads, although now the margin just a little bit smaller between him and his Hydra Race Geodesic Racing teammate of John Badefer. Marius Valiocas as ever in the mix with Phil Kraus, Adam Blocker, and then Caleb Bensey, all within 29 points of your current championship leader. Don't discount the likes of Graham Saunders, Alexander Vanderset, Alex Guyon, and Mike Rasmas as well. But ultimately, Andrew at the front with just 4 races down. Yes, Austin Young has started with a real stride at the front. Don't count out, though, Phil Kraus with some slight changes to the car. I'm going to be curious with just 7 days of preparation what drivers have been able to figure out.
Absolutely. This is a short week. Despite us having a long break from the last time out, it is a short week because we've just received an update to all of these cars. So the setup is new. The cars are slightly different, but look at how compact that sports car standing and the LMDH standings are. There's so many drivers that are still in the mix, as you say.
And from LMDH, of course, that's with the BMW M Hybrid, the BMW M4 GT3 split up into Pro and Am. They fight on track together, score points together, but are scored in the championship separately. Yes, Sean Campbell has been perfect in that WMP racing car, but really, we're in for a fun fight. Joshua Chin, Ryan Otis, second in the championship. Can we call it GT 3.5 Pro? I think so, Andrew.
I think so. Sean Campbell has really wrested control of this championship already early on in this season, and he doesn't seem to be wanting to let go. But the battle for second is really, really tight. Josh Chin and Ryan Otis. Otis started strong, but Chin is really starting to come into his own in these GT3 cars. So it'll be interesting to see who is going to be sort of the best of the rest, and if Sean Campbell runs into a little bit of let's say, misfortune over the next couple of races. Chin and Otis definitely still could be in this.
I'll give a shout out to Matthew Morehart as well, who has backed up Ryan Otis in the Synergy Motorsports duo. Miguel Vigo trying to climb his way back into the top 5. In the AMs, it's been all Chase Wilson, who runs himself with 88 points just behind James Paulson, or just in front of James Paulson, I should say. Chris Staples, Chris Reagan tied on points, and just 1 point further back Trevor Malone. The AM Championship. Always want to keep an eye on how aggressively they're fighting with the pros to maintain not just track position, but points as well. Here's a look at the Team Championship, and just note, in GT3 you can have a driver in both Pro or AM, but they, regardless, are scoring points together. Looks fun in the LMDHs, where Hydra Race Geodesic Racing are starting to build an advantage, but with Powerslide Motorsports in second. No Adam Blocker for them today in the GT3 Championship, though. That's the story I was talking about with Matthew Morehart and Ryan Otis, Andrew. They lead by, what, a good 70-plus points.
Yeah. It helps when you have 2 really strong drivers on your team, as Morehart and Otis are proving, but I think that it's going to start to come together a little bit more for some of these GT3 drivers. As we say, a lot of people have been just trying to get used to these cars. So many drivers in the Lionheart series used to the open wheel series with a lot of downforce. GT3 is a whole different kettle of fish when it comes to driving, and I think that you're starting to see some of the drivers starting to get a little bit more speed, so we should see a little bit more competition, particularly in the team standings.
Grab a look at your Gomez Sim Industry Series details, because as we head into this debut series of the Buttkicker Sportscar Series, it's also the 10th year of the Lionheart Racing Series. You've got 2 ultimate driving machines. Yes, the brand new GTP BMW M Hybrid V8 alongside the BMW M4 GT3, both cars that debuted in the virtual world before they went out and competed in the real world. Custom fixed setup built by the Majors Garage. All drivers have the same base setup that they're working from in terms of on track, just 2 pans, 2 feet, and slight adjustments at times to get the most from the car as they fight for their share of $18,000. And both the LMDH and GT3 champion win a BMW M4 GT4 experience at the BMW Performance Driving School in Thermal, California. That's all in the 90-minute multi-class races where, yes, we have live race control, because boy, is that going to be important here today. You can go 3-4 wide, but not always at the times that it tends to happen. Here's the arena track analysis, though, at a track that, like I mentioned earlier, you either love or you hate. track limits are going to be a challenge, with clusters of traffic, I think, really being a talking point at the early stages of the race. And like we mentioned earlier, updates to both cars just 7 days ago. GT3 may be relatively minor, but in terms of the GTP, we've got a big shift in terms of longer fuel windows, and that's going to mean just a one-stop race for them, Andrew, at the Circuit of the Americas. Tire wear, always a consideration. Going to be very interested to see how they're going to fare out there on a scorching track.
Tire wear will definitely be on the forefront of all these LMDH drivers' minds here today. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the fuel window because of how long it is. We were seeing numbers for tire wear in the 30, even down into the 20% if you're not taking care of your tires. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens to these drivers over the course of the stint in terms of pace, in terms of their ability to get to the end of this. They should have no problem on fuel, as you say, but it's the tires that everyone's going to be concerned about.
Looking forward to seeing how that fares out in GT3 as well. 17 laps seems to be the number that indicated for them, with 17 seconds estimated as the pit lane delta, not including the time that you stop and take service for. Let's not forget that tires are taken with fuel. Maybe slightly dulls the strategy, but makes life slightly easier for the drivers here today. Look from up above, though, at the Lone Star State, and I always don't like these flat track maps because, unfortunately, you don't get that sense of elevation, especially up through turn number 1, Andrew, where you rise yourself up the hill. Gravity can help you brake just that little bit later, but it funnels down very tightly to the apex. You can start 2 wide. You can't really start 3 wide. You'll end up single file eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and look at all of the sweeping corners throughout the course of this lap here. You see 2 really long straightaways where all the LMDHs will try and get the passes done, but then you have long sections where the corners are really linked together. You have the S's in the first half of the lap and the stadium section in the second half of the lap. That's going to make traffic really, really difficult for these LMDHs to negotiate. So timing is going to be incredibly important around here. And as we already talked about, tire management with all of the stress that the tires will go to, both in terms of the loads through the corners and on the long straightaways.
Well, qualifying already underway. Drivers get 4 laps, track to themselves, and whatever combination of laps that they want to work to get the fastest lap time. Here's a look at those track conditions. Clear skies, I think the thing that's going to intrigue me the most as we head into what I would expect to be cooler track conditions, Andrew, in the afternoon, heading into the evening.
Yeah, that's the one little bit of respite for these drivers here today, is that it is a little bit of a later start time. We're at 4:24 right now in sim time. So it's going to be a little bit cooler than it otherwise could have been, but at the same time, it's still going to be very tricky out there. And then it'll be interesting to see over the course of the 90 minutes whether or not the sun starts to play a little bit of role in the race as well.
Well, there's no surprise in the GT3 class to see Sean Campbell at the front once again, 205.621. Currently, provisional pole sits with this man, Graham Saunders, in the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing number 100. Heads his way into that final corner on what will be his final attempt to improve on a 150.158. Already more than 4/10 clear of the rest of the chasing pack. You'll find another 100th. It's neither really here nor there, but still provisional pole. Phil Krause will get one more attempt, as will Michael O'Brien, who's currently working his way in through that stadium section in towards the final sector.
And this is so crucial for lap time through here, Arjuna. You really have to nail the throttle application through there because it's so easy for the tires to just spool up and get a little bit loose, and you lose 2 or 3 tenths just by wheel spin alone. So O'Brien looked really nice and steady through there, but it doesn't look like he's quite pushing as hard as he could be through that section. Didn't really go out as far as I maybe would have if I were him, but he's looking not too bad. I think, I think he's going to abandon the lap.
Yeah, not abandoning the lap is Austin Young, who will jump to now. When we were here for the Porsche Esports Super Cup earlier, 2,000s off, by the way, for Austin Young, it was interesting to hear from some of the drivers that on the course of qualifying laps, they were having to deal with just a little bit of tire wear. And so I'm not shocked to be seeing something similar. That's John Baderfer, who's in 5th, who is already, as far as I'm aware, wrapped up 4 qualifying laps, is basically out there for a bit of flying practice. Let's jump on board then for a flying lap. We'll Phil Krause and get a sense for what we're going to be in for here today at the Circuit of the Americas, especially on this climb up in towards turn number 1. It looks rather intimidating. Spot your braking zone as late as you dare. And just look how much it funnels on in, how much Kraus was trying to delay the entry to square off the corner and get on the power, descend down in towards the S's, using the hybrid as much as he could. This is where, though, you've got to be brave. The S's have those anti-cut curbs that mark either side of the track, and if you hit them, that's your qualifying lap done and dusted. But just maintaining that momentum, so easy to get wrong, so difficult to get right, especially as you work over through turn 7 here, where the track falls away from you on exit and then down the hill into what is maybe one of the most important braking zones on the track, Andrew.
Yeah, this hairpin really sets you up for the long back straightaway. It can make or break your lap here as Phil Kraus gets a little bit loose on the exit there. Not sure if he got the power down quite the way he wanted, but the other thing that I want to talk about is look at how Phil Kraus has been using every single inch of the road that he possibly can here. Track limits is something we haven't yet talked about, but it is a big story at COTA where you really have to maximize every single limit that you can, but if you go 1 millimeter too far, you can instantly get an off track, and that will invalidate your lap.
And to that point, you've gone through all of, 18 quarters now, 19, 20. It's so easy to get that wrong, but Phil Kraus very tidy as he worked up through, turn 15, as you now head through 16, 17, and 18, modeled after Turkey's triple left-hander, but this time through the right and slightly off camber at times. This is the corner that at times has really boggled opinions in terms of liberal track limits, but Phil Kraus, no major drama there, neither through the final corner. It's been a tidy lap from Phil overall. Is it going to be enough for him to close the 0.4 of a second up towards pole? Well, he improves, but only by a tenth. Phil Kraus on the outside of the front row.
But a really solid lap from Phil Kraus. I do think that it was really on that exit of that hairpin corner on the long back straightaway. That's where he probably lost a tenth, maybe 2/10 there. Cost him a shot at the pole.
I like that we got to do a full lap here in qualifying, because I don't get the sense that we're going to get the chance to do that in the race itself. Ryan Otis second provisionally in qualifying with 6.5 tenths of a second, make that now just over 6 tenths of a second to Sean Campbell, but then a full 4 tenths further back to Christopher Hill. GT3 might as well be the Sean Campbell show, all things considered. No different here in Texas.
No, Sean Campbell has picked up right where he left off, and it's been a dominating year for Campbell so far in these GT3s. He just has the cars just figured out so well, and it's going to be difficult for the likes of Ryan Otis, Miguel Vigo, Josh Chin, and Christopher Hill to really take it to him today, because this track is so technical. It's so important to have everything nailed, and Campbell, as you can see, just has everything nailed just that little bit more than everyone else does.
Sounds like he's got some new pedals on his rig as well, which is a dangerous sign. If Sean Campbell's upgrading hardware, he's already quick enough. We don't need to give him any more help. Here's Staropoli to the line. Will be one of the final cars to set a time with 20 seconds left in qualifying. And as he crosses and puts on a show for us to put a book on this part of the race session, improves, but doesn't improve him in position. He sticks in 12th spot. Give a shout out again, by the way, to Chase Wilson, 6th in the combined GT3 standings.
Yeah, really nice job there from Chase Wilson. Definitely looking to bounce back from a off day at Watkins Glen last week.
Oh boy, it was an off day for quite a few at Watkins Glen. We haven't talked about it too much, and that's not that's on purpose. We wanted to steer away from the topic, but we're ready to rumble. The drivers have had a couple of weeks away. Let's grab a look at your Buttkicker starting grid. Graham Saunders grabs pole position here for the Buttkicker Grand Prix of the Circuit of the Americas with a 151.45, 3 tenths clear of Phil Kraus. It'll then be Michael O'Brien in that 145 machine alongside the championship leader Austin Young to line up on row number 2. Beta for Van der Sant 5th and 6th positions, while rolling behind then inside of row number 4 it's Flynn Lazier. He's got David Sirwar for company, but the margin's looking pretty big in this LMDH class, 2 full seconds back to 9th, where Tyler Groff is inside of the 2nd Synergy Lavoie Motorsports car of Alex Guyon. Caleb Bensi and then Barrett roll through returns 11th and 12th positions, with Matt Taylor, Marius Valiokas, and then Mike Razmas, your 15 LMDH cars, getting stacked up on that back straightaway and getting ready to roll. Slightly larger GT3 class, and, well, no surprise that Sean Campbell, for the 5th race in a row, is on pole. Ryan Otis alongside has a good opportunity to try and put some distance between him and Joshua Chin, given that was almost half a second in qualifying. Christopher Hill, Miguel Vigo, and then Josh Chin, all inside of the top 5 in GT3 Pro. Your first AM, Chase Wilson, once again well representing those AM drivers alongside Joshua Chin. Carlos Villa and then Matthew Morhart, 7th and 8th positions, while Andrew Marquez and Lionel Kalisto bookend your top 10. The second of the AMs, Chris Staples, is in 11th. He's got Eric Seropoli alongside him, 2 full seconds off of Sean Campbell, with Trevor Malone, Jim Herrick, 13th and 14th in AMs. Cars, Craig Forsyth, Jimbo Pfeiffer, 15th and 16th positions. It's Chris Reagan, Logan Spath, and then in 19, Travis Jägerlehner, James Paulson, Creighton Carter, and then Eliza Indriani that roll from the entirety of the 22-car GT3 field. That's already heading their way down through that middle sector and getting ready to get racing. Again, with 90 minutes thrown up onto the clock. We've got featured onboard cameras to run you down through, and so let's start by heading our way to the GT3 leader, where Sean Campbell's going to give us a great vantage point to ride from, and riding with him is the BMW Performance Driving School. Drive on the edge of physics and experience the ultimate rush. Visit bmwperformancecenter.com. Hopefully, assuming there's no technical dramas there for Sean Campbell. Quickly over to Ryan Otis. Sim racing is better with Buttkicker. Visit thebutkicker.com. Up towards the LMDHs, John Baderfer rides with HyperX. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. And last but not least, outside of the front row, Phil Kraus rides with Next Level Racing. Take your racing to the next level. Visit nextlevelracing.com. Well, Andrew, I feel a little bit tense. How are you feeling?
Whenever you go into turn 1 at COTA, you got to be feeling tense, especially if you're in that sort of mid-pack area. It's going to be always hectic as it funnels down from, as we've seen, almost 5 wide at certain times on this track, down into 1 here. It's going to be very interesting to watch. For those new to the Buttkicker Sportscar series, there's a start zone, split class starts, and so as the LMDHs head their way to that starting zone, competition, commitment, excitement, this is Lionheart. Delayed green flag here for the Buttkicker Grand Prix of COTA. The field stacks up. Graham Saunders leads us up the hill in towards turn number 1, immediately side by side behind, but Phil Kraus covers off a move on the inside and gets his way into second spot. No major drama for those BMW M Hybrid V8s. Same climb now for the M4 GT3s, and Sean Campbell, as expected, will jump and lead in towards turn number 1. Otis from Vigo, who grabs a spot in front of Christopher Hill. Bit of a check-up as they accordion through at the back of the pack, but as they wind through the S's for the GT3s, LMDHs already running down into turn number 11. And it was Michael O'Brien who had a little bit of an issue coming from 3rd spot on the grid. He didn't quite get away as well as he could have, and that's allowed Alexander Van de Sant to vault his way up the grid already from 6th place up to 4th now. A little bit more side-by-side further back in the GT3s, Caleb Bensi as well as Tyler Graf fighting as they work their way down this long back straightaway that's not very straight. It winds left and right, it's up and down into that braking zone into turn number 12 as well, but for the most part they figure it out. Big send from Flynn Lazier, big send I think from Caleb Bensi as well. Lazier gets it stopped in time, Bensi just about does so as well. GT3s making that run as well. Sean Campbell already 1 full second clear. Pace is coming quick and fast here. All the action that's going on, and you see some cars locking up through that stadium section. The tires are cold here, and it's really important to get their way through the stadium section well on this first lap. The GT3s are starting to finally get a little bit more strung out here. There's not as much side-by-side action as we saw through that first bit. There was a little bit of contact in turn 1. I believe it might have been Jim Herrick and Jimbo Pfeiffer who got together, caused a little bit of a stack up, but other than that, pretty clean on this first lap. Some more side-by-side in the GT3s, but it's been relatively calm, which is what we like to see. 1 full lap in the book. Sanders from Kraus from Young at the front of the LMDH class. Another big look to the inside. I think that was potentially Marius Valiokas, who did get past David Sirai, it would seem.
3 positions already gained for the race clutch driver that didn't get a time in qualifying. Andrew mentioned track limit's going to be a major talking point. I think that is indeed going to be something to focus on. GT3's up the hill into turn number 1. Miguel Vigo running in 3rd position, able to take advantage on that start. Turn 1, one of the few passing opportunities that you can really take advantage of in these GT3 machines, but now, if you're Miguel Vigo, knowing that tire wear is going to be a consideration, fuel mileage may be a number that you can hit as well. Would not be shocked if we see the Hydro Race Geodesic Racing number 66 settle into rhythm behind Ryan Otis.
Absolutely, and this is a very much a rhythm track. You can see with these, especially with the back and forth S's section that you're going through right now, you really need to get that good rhythm and get it established early on. If you get out of rhythm, it can very much upset your whole stint, and you can very easily start to lose handle on the tires as well.
Josh Chin, aggressive, past Chase Wilson in that AM class after Wilson was able to get the jump on the start as well. Seemed like one side, of that line was able to get a little bit better off the corner, off the start than the other, but that's always a little bit of a risk when you are not in the same line as the leader, is that you're not necessarily going to be released at the same time as when the leader goes, and so we saw it with the LMDHs getting a little bit stacked up. Maybe GT3s getting sorted out in the nick of time as well. Tyler Graf a little bit slow up the corner, but here comes Valiokas up the inside of David Sirois.
A really optimistic move there from Valiokas, but it looks like he's just about pulled it off. Sirois fighting back though. Nice defense there from sorry, go ahead.
It's not Sirois, excuse me. Ooh, that's Barrett Rolfe in the Tiger Hawk Simsport car, but Valiokas is pushing. There's a great example of how hard.
You can see the car just got a little bit loose there, just a small wiggle, and he had to take evasive action, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has a slowdown penalty here. Oh, as we see an LMDH off the track there.
I think that was Barrett Rolfe, top of turn 9, very wide, but has been able to hold on to it. Valiokas might still have a slowdown penalty, let's be honest. Not sure if he's been able to clear it just yet. And so as they head down the back straightaway, think he was able to spool the hybrid up and get off the corner quite well. So I don't necessarily think there's too much that happened there. Let's quickly grab a look at what happened here. Starting with Tyler Graf, who did go quite slow, and I think that's maybe why. A bit of a slowdown there.
Yeah, so there is a slowdown penalty if you go too wide through that second to last corner. So he just gets off a line here and serves the penalty on the front straightaway. So, but that checkup then allows this battle here between Rolfe and Valiokas. Really optimistic move there, and then they do a real good job of staying side by side through turn 2 here, and then you saw just that little bit of a twitch there from Barrett Rolfe, and that was all it took to send it off the road.
And let's just ride here. Oh, he hits the curb and it just wiggles that car.
Yeah, those anti-cut curbs are really, really treacherous in this car, and it'll be very lucky for him if he didn't escape any sort of underwing or suspension damage from that as well. And that's the snap that you can get from these cars. One of the things with the tweaks to this setup is that the power comes on with both the battery and the engine at the same time. So if you have too much wheel in the car...
Uh-oh! Sorry, Andrew. Matthew Morehart, second of the Synergy Motorsports contingent, goes around in through the middle of, I think, turn 13 and 14. And curiously enough, slips down to 15th spot. Trying to slide back into line. But that's an uncharacteristic mistake for someone that we were praising so much during our pre-show. Is that what you call a commentator's curse?
It might be a little bit of a commentator's curse, but it could also just be that he's one of the drivers who doesn't necessarily like this track very much. He wasn't necessarily showing the speed that he could, and it was very similar to what happened with Barrett Rolfe there, as he just hit the anti-cut curb on the inner portion of that entrance to the stadium section there, and around she went.
We've all done it, unfortunately. Sean Campbell not having too many internet issues for those that are curious. Still out there at the front of the GT3 field, and now by 2.5 seconds. Yeah, GT3 might as well just be the Sean Campbell show, and then we can have GT3.5. Now, John Baderford goes around, not sure, I think that might be turn number 15. the Hydro Race Geodesic Racing machine down to 9th.
Yeah, that was in the middle of the stadium section there, Arjuna, and yeah, that will be a costly mistake for Betafort because he's now lost, I believe, 4 or 5 positions there. He was following along behind Van de Sant. He was in 6th position, tried to make the dive on Van de Sant. Van de Sant committed to the corner already. You basically have to commit to that corner way back halfway through the last corner. You can't really get offline, and that's really not a good place to try and make that type of move.
He's, as Martin Brundle would say, a day late and $1 short. Although in Texas, I don't necessarily think that would hold up as well. What would the Texas equivalent be there?
It's got to be something to do with guns.
Yeah, let's steer away from that one. But I think Van de Sant might have some damage, and I would not be shocked if he's going to be a little bit aggrieved about that little bit of contact. But I don't disagree with the point that you're making. If you open the door, it's one of those corners that does suck you in. Drivers have been known to go for a move in a hole that does not always necessarily exist. Starting to stretch out in these LMDHs, but it comes at what might be a relatively important time because, as you can see on the bottom right corner of your screen, we've had one bit of lap traffic. However, your LMDH leader working through the middle sector, probably only about 1-2 laps away from getting into the meat of that GT3 field.
And it'll be very interesting to see how the drivers react to getting into the meat of the GT3 field because, as I said off the top, it's very difficult to pass through some of these long sweeping sections here. You just have to sit there patiently behind the GT3 cars in some cases. And we've seen before this year, Arjuna, that these LMDH drivers don't necessarily always have the patience.
Yes, Watkins Glen was something. We haven't talked about it much yet.
It was an interesting race. We'll say that.
Yeah, we steered around it quite well in the pre-show. We didn't bring it up once until I did.
Yeah, well, I mean,
hashtag blame Arjuna.
Yeah. What can we say here? But so far, though, I will say Graham Saunders has done a really good job at the front here. He's just controlling the pace nicely. In front of Phil Kraus. Kraus 2 seconds back, Austin Young, and then I think that contact between Van de Sant and Betafort's really checked up the trailing pack here. So it's really a 3-car battle here we have at the front of your LMDH field.
I love that. This track is so underrated because, in my opinion, of some of these elevation things that you have, and it leads to some great camera shots. I think this is from one of the towers that we have. Not sure if this is from the big tower, but you saw as Saunders was winding his way up and through the S's, a great shot of just how stacked up that GT3 field has become, and I think we'll get a pretty similar shot as they head their way in through this middle sector. First cycle through of traffic is always the most important because the fields are stacked up, and it means that there is the most opportunity to gain or lose time. How aggressive are you going to be in the situation, especially when you've got cars fighting like Andrew Marquez and Chris Staples?
And that's going to be the ticket here, is that you really do have to make hay while the sun shines. If you're some of these drivers, particularly if you're like a Josh Chin who maybe qualified a little bit further back than you maybe wanted to in this race. Not that that hasn't happened to Josh before this season, as we see Graham Saunders just starting to come back onto the back end of the GT3 field in earnest now. You can see, look at that high of the cars right in front of him.
And side by side in front of him, this is where you've got to make decisions. Which direction do you want to go? It's Morhart and Pfeiffer on the recovery drive. 3 wide as Saunders will launch it up the hill. And with the slightly better braking of that hybrid car, they're able to slow it down in the nick of time. Phil Kraus not able to slot through as efficiently. Saunders slides his way and sides his way on through. Kraus gets stacked up behind a GT3 car into the entrance of the S's, and this is where the seconds will rise.
Yeah, you saw Kraus, he probably lost 1.5 seconds there just from 3 of those, 3 of the 5 S's there, that he was stuck behind Matthew Morhart. And it's not Morhart's fault, to be clear. That's just, he's just driving his line how he has to drive it. But it was, he was within 1.5 seconds. Now he's almost 3 seconds back of Saunders just because of that.
Small decisions here and there can make a difference. Sometimes it's just luck, plain and simple, as it was there. Don't disagree, by the way, with the comment that someone made in the YouTube chat. Let's BOP Sean Campbell. He gets plus 10 kilograms. and he has to do a donut at the start. I feel like that is not the worst compromise in the world. Here's Carlos Villa, by the way, gets in front of Chase Wilson. This is Pro versus Am, but as we mentioned off the top, they're fighting on track for different championships, yes, but for the same points, Chase Wilson has been a fixture inside of this top 10.
Yes, he has, and today's no different. So far, he's been putting a lot of pressure on the driver in front of him, and it's really been a treat to watch some of these AM drivers come to grips with this car and progress, and none more than the number 13 of Chase Wilson.
I'm going to keep going back to this point that eventually we're going to have to bump him up to be in the pros, although that would be slightly unfair given the current speed of a certain Sean Campbell at the very front. Barrett Rolf's recovery drive, by the way, starts to build. He gets in front of Mike Rasmussen, who's somewhat struggling for speed. Baderfer and Valiokas are going to duke it out through traffic, and this is where that hybrid deployment's going to come into play as well. Who's able to get the better runs off of the corner? John Baderfer dropped down early doors, already back up to 8th position. Marius Valiokas trying to charge his way on forward. Two drivers that we'd expect to be relatively good with that traffic management.
Yeah, but part of it is also just luck as well. You have to catch the drivers at the right spots. If you don't, then you're suddenly held up. Even if you're the best of drivers, some of these corners you simply cannot get more than one car through there side by side. It just can't be done. As you see, just a little bit of a checkup there for the LMDH car on your screen, but man, there's a lot of chaos out there right now, isn't there, Archer?
Yeah, I think everywhere you look, something's going on. Matt Taylor's dropped to the very tail end of the LMDH pack. Meanwhile, Marquez and Staples are back to fighting at it, and they've got a trio of LMDH machines that will slither up the inside, being led, I believe, by Michael O'Brien, so that will be behind him Bensi and then Baderfer. Big launch up the inside, and that's where you've got to be careful. GT3 cars have ABS, LMDHs do not, and so a big old send from, I believe that was Chris Staples, somehow just staying off the door of John Baderfer.
Yeah, that was not an ideal move there from the GT3 car, but they just did enough to stay off of each other there. Meanwhile, a big send there. We've got two GT3 drivers fighting it out here.
I think it was Chris Staples.
I believe that was Chris Staples again there. So Staples with a couple of big sends there over the course of that lap, and he's got himself up nicely into the top 10 now, and he's actually getting sort of close to his amateur competitor in Chase Wilson. He's only two spots back behind Wilson now. 2 spots,
but a good 6 odd seconds off is the crucial number, so it's going to be a bit of work to head back up through the field. There's Tyler Graf up the inside, that's 11th. Guyon behind in 12th in the prototype class. Whew. Again, Staples able to just hold off the Synergy Lavoie car, and Staropoli got uncomfortably close, at least for me, and GT3 traffic, at least for one cycle done for the majority of some LMDH cars, but O'Brien loses out not just to Benzi and Baderfer through the S's. Oh my days, so much chopping and changing all over the place.
Yeah, O'Brien got caught on the wrong side of traffic there, and Baderfer was able to slide up the inside, and now O'Brien's going to actually lose another position there. I believe that was to Valiokas as well, so a really unfortunate lap there for Michael O'Brien. I believe that's -3 within just a few seconds there.
And this is by far one of the more difficult tracks, in my opinion, to actually manage traffic around, because you've got the stark contrast in the high speed between those prototypes with downforce and the GT3s with the lack of it, and then the slower speed corners where, if we're talking about mechanical grip, honestly, maybe at times the GT3s, especially with driver aids, just that a little bit easier to maneuver. I think that's the better way to describe it. These drivers able to navigate their way on through, and I think that, with the exception of Sean Campbell, they have dealt with the GT3 field for the first time, and will have maybe 10 or so laps before they can do so again. A couple of cars that aren't yet done with traffic, Rolf and Guyon, and Graf in front of them in that black A stealth black entry indeed. This is going to be a good opportunity for Guyon. Barrett Rolf got a little bit side-checked off the corner and slid the rear end out, but Guyon actually doesn't get the hybrid spooled off the corner and going to hold on to 13th spot.
Yeah, and the other thing that we talked about this briefly, but the difference in braking power between the GT3s and the LMDHs is really pronounced at a circuit like this, where you have a number of very sort of complex braking zones, particularly through that stadium section, where this is probably more than any other track a place where the GT3s can sort of find themselves in trouble through no fault of their own, just because an LMDH will get in front of them and then suddenly be slower than them, and they're not expecting it.
Did you see are there tire tracks through the gravel there?
There might be.
Okay, my eyes, I thought for a second were playing tricks on me. I will endeavor to try and figure that out. We were 3 wide once again. Christopher Hill, I don't think is going to be too impressed with that one, as they squabbled for LMDH positions around him. Guyon as well, as Rasmus and Taylor at the very back of this field. Check back up in with now a 4-car tandem that's closing in on Alexander Van der Sant. I do believe there was damage done to that number 96 machine for Powerslide Motorsports at some point through the contact that he had. And now I think he's going to be watching pretty closely and see how he's going to be able to defend with, from what I heard, Andrew, everyone expected to come in on the very same lap in this LMDH class.
Yes, I would expect them all coming down pit lane basically at the same time. It's such a long lap here that you don't want to get caught out. And if you try and stretch it, all you're going to do is be on much worse tires than everyone who has come down pit lane already. So I would suspect that all of the LMDHs will all be down at the same time. And to your point about Van der Sant, I'm not sure whether he has too much damage, probably a little bit of damage. How much it's slowing him down is debatable at this point. He has gotten a little bit of a gap on Beta for and Bensi and O'Brien that probably was aided a little bit by the traffic, but at the same time he's doing a good job of just sort of stabilize where he is. Also, Flynn Lazier is about 4 or 5 seconds up the road, and he's doing a really good job. Oh, big LMDH incident there.
Barrett Rolf, your BMW's not meant to hop, skip, and jump like that, and that's with Ryan Otis coming into shot through the S's. Seems to be a major drama. I couldn't find, by the way, what happened to send some gravel, to send those tire tracks through gravel. So my suspicion is that probably happened in practice or qualifying, and I just was not paying enough attention then. Was Barrett Rolf paying attention here? We'll find out.
And it's a very similar story. It just looks like Barrett didn't learn his lesson the first time, hit the exact same anti-cut curb, and then there's a little bit of a bump there that you really don't want to hit. Normally you don't have to hit it, but when you're spinning through the gravel, sometimes you do. He
didn't even have any sort of option as to whether it was literally right there. He was going to hit it one way or the other. That was a little bit of a scare, I'm sure, but Barrett Rolf hasn't had an easy day by any means. See how Van der Sant's going to do, though. It's not Bensi that's the first to arrive to potentially slide up into the top 5. Instead, it is going to be John Badefer, as I believe Barrett Rolf has had more issues. Oh, it's really not a good day for him here in Texas.
Yeah, I suspect that little bit excursion that we saw probably damaged the suspension and probably the under tray as well, so his car is probably not handling very well at this point.
We'll find out here. Well, that car, yeah, rear end just does not look connected to itself or the road in any way, shape, or form.
No, it does not, but back live, we're gearing up for a good round 2 of Van der Sant versus Badefer, and I would tend to wager here, Arjuna, that Van der Sant is not necessarily going to give Badefer a lot of room here.
Van der Sant's very, doesn't get angry at all sometimes behind the wheel, doesn't get frustrated with other drivers. There's no bias, by the way, here in the commentary booth. It's definitely not like we've got 2 Powerslide Motorsports commentators right now, as Valiokis gets past Caleb Bensi. Let's focus our direction away from the Powerslide Motorsports driver.
Yes, we do have a nice battle going on. Valiokis has really been putting a lot of pressure on Bensi the last few laps, and it looks like he's going to get the move done here into the hairpin at the end of the long back straightaway. You see a GT3 car getting well wide to make sure he doesn't hold it up, but Valiokis is really fighting back with Bensi here, so it's a really back and forth battle that we got going on.
I'm surprised you weren't impressed by how many times I managed to say Power Slide Motorsports in that sentence, by the way, because I've made an effort. It is Bensi back in front of Valiokas, although he tried to clear himself. The race clutch car was just about still there. Oh, there was some almost miscommunication between the two, and I've got to wonder, as they lean on track limits once again, how close to the incident limit that these drivers have been getting, how much they've been racking up, because one thing that we talk about a lot when it comes to tracks like this, where it's so easy to rack up incident points, is rationing them and budgeting them for the end of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important at a track like this because you can get 3 or 4 in a lap if you're not careful just by going just that little bit too wide. This is not a forgiving track in terms of track limits, simply because it has to be, because it's so smooth when you get offline. There's a big advantage to be had by abusing the track limits, as we saw in IndyCar in their one and only visit here. So iRacing has rightfully, in my mind, set it to very strict, but at the same time, it's a Herman Tilke designed track, so the corner exits don't necessarily make the most sense in the world.
No, it is sometimes one of those. I said at the very start, you either are fast here or you don't like this track. Oftentimes it's you either have multiple monitors or an ultra-wide monitor, or you're on a single monitor, and so you can't really see your apexes. Don't know if Alexander Van der Sant's really going to have too much to offer in terms of defense, but for the second time, Baderfer and Van der Sant come to blows. It means Marius Valiokas as well as Michael O'Brien get past Caleb Bensi, but here's the fight back from the race first car.
And it looks like Baderfer might be done for the day if that is any judge there. It looks like the heavy contact there, or at least he's just letting Van der Sant by, maybe acknowledging some fault there. We'll have to get a replay going there, but
it wasn't the same corner as last time, was it? It was like 3 corners earlier, but here we go.
I mean, he just kind of drives in the back of Van der Sant, doesn't he?
It's a little bit clumsy. Again, 2 Power Slide Motorsports drivers being very careful about what we say right now.
I just don't know what else Van der Sant could have done there, to be honest. Like, he even left him a lane on the inside there. And Baderfer looked like he braked before Van der Sant did, which was the other weird part about that. So,
well, Van der Sant.
Yeah, I don't know.
Van der Sant's into pit lane, I can tell you. Josh Chin and Christopher Hill. This is the fight for 4th, and an important fight for 4th as well, because a bit of a breakaway has formed for 2nd and 3rd, and Chin, I don't think, wants to let Vigo and Otis run away. Finally gets the move done on that 101, but Josh Chin in the 73 has now got 3 seconds to close on Vigo, and then another 3 seconds to Ryan Otis.
Yeah, but getting this move done now is really important for Chin. He is going to have to come down pit lane here sooner rather than later. He's probably got maybe another 5 or so laps, 4 or 5 laps. Getting it done before that happens and allowing him to get a little bit of a gap here is going to make pitting just that much more comfortable for Chin and make catching up to Vigo that much more plausible.
Did you say you wanted some traffic, by the way, Andrew?
I did mention traffic once or twice, yes.
Yeah, so we've got another dose of it. Again, they say it's always bigger in Texas, and that means that once again we slide our way through a traffic cycle. There's your race leader, who is now 6 seconds clear of Phil Kraus, and then another 6 seconds back to a second Hydro Race geodesic racing car, by the way, of Austin Young, the championship leader, who is being hunted down by Flynn Lazier. Last time was a second. Yes, traffic plays its part, and the traffic gives and the traffic takes, but you called out Flynn slightly earlier for having figured something out about the balance of the car. 1:52.8 last time by was what, the second fastest or third fastest car in the class.
And the nice thing for Flynn is so many times when we've watched him, we've seen him more or less be in the thick of the action. Here today, he's just sort of off on his own, and I think it's allowed him to get into the rhythm that we were talking about right off the start. And he's just found some decent pace here where he's just able to click off lap after lap on his own and not have to get involved in all the extracurriculars that are going on today.
There's plenty of those. Sean Campbell's internet connection, by the way. Well, he's got new pedals. The next thing might be a new Ethernet cable. I'd recommend that. What else could we try and get for Sean? A direct connection to iRacing is maybe the only other thing. It's been slightly inconsistent today, and so our championship leader, our GT3 leader on track, we're hoping things hang on. Let's head over to a car that we just saw fighting, by the way, and talk very quickly about our BMW Performance Driving School stats. This is not the car that I meant to go over to. There we go. Here's Phil Kraus, who has some rather ridiculous stats when you talk about them out loud. In 39 Lionheart Open Wheel Series starts, he has got 35 top 10s, he has got 33 top 5s, and he has got 30 podiums. Amongst that, 13 pole positions, 16 wins. The only thing that may be surprising, Andrew, is he didn't get to win on his very first Lionheart Open Wheel start. No, Phil had to wait until race number 2.
Yeah, and it would have been a storybook start because his first start was at Phillip Island. So if he had just been able to pull that off, we could have said that his stats were basically perfect. But as it is, well, he just ruined it, basically. Basically.
He had the year in 2022 where he did actually end up finishing a season without... Whoa! Actually finishing off the podium. He tried to finish off the track there around the outside of Christopher Hill.
Yeah, I don't think that he necessarily had to make that move personally, but it was a choice. He committed to it, and he was able to do it.
It was one of the choices of... It was one of the passes through traffic of all time.
It was. Quickly, though, Arjuna, John Betafor, the stewards have black flagged him, so he did have to serve a drive-through penalty there.
Second bit of contact with Van der Sant. He tried redressing, but Van der Sant's car seems to be, well, to quote Lando Norris, broken. And so for the second time has headed down to pit lane. And I believe, unfortunately, Van der Sant is done and dusted. Betafor is going to insert himself into a bit of a fight here as well. You've got Graf, you've got Razmas, Guyon, Taylor. So I guess it's at least not boring for the 67.
No, he's going to have to fight his way back through the field for a second time here, so it will definitely be an entertaining race, if not necessarily the most productive one that he was hoping for. But yeah, it should be a good battle here, watching him try to get through these drivers, because while he's trying to get through and get back into sort of where we're expecting to be, all of these drivers are still fighting with each other, so they can't afford to necessarily just let him go by too easily.
Well, that's already one, because Matt Taylor couldn't do much about what was a very opportunistic move there by Taylor in through turns 16, 17. Caleb Benzie, by the way, I think becomes... I was going to say our first taker onto pit lane, but I was expecting everyone to do a one-stop race. Chase Wilson has also come in slightly earlier than anticipated. Big lockup there in front of Betafor. Might have been Tyler Graf. Big puff of smoke. No major drama, apparently.
No major drama except for the brief 3 wide down the front straightaway, but we're used to that at this point. But we do have a move coming down into turn 1. That's Betafor getting the move done on Alex Guyon. Next up, Mike Razmas and Tyler Graf.
I am a little bit intrigued by Chase Wilson coming down to pit lane for what was a 22-second stop. Our AM-class leader, who has clearly decided that he wants to split this race into thirds. We'll see how that fares out for him, if it's going to gain him some positions. I had started to drop slightly backwards on the long run. Caleb Benzie stopped for 30 seconds, is heading back out there now at the start of apparently a 2-stop LMDH strategy.
Which is an interesting strategy to make. It could benefit him in terms of fresh tires, but I don't know. I don't think that it's gonna work for Benzie, but it should be, I will say, a 2-stop strategy for the GT3s. So anyone who's come down from the GT3s, that would be within the window for me.
You are a couple of laps early, though, and so maybe you're going to pay some punishment later on. Betafor beautifully up the inside of Razmas, but They wind their way to a bit more traffic. How are they going to play this? 3 wide, not necessarily a wise move. And to his credit, Betafer says, I don't want to be in the steward's book once again. Backs out of it, and we'll try and set this up once again. Remember, elongated fuel window for these LMDH machines, with the car getting a bigger fuel tank. And so therefore seeing one-stop strategies for them. Christopher Hill, second GT3, to head their way down on towards the pit lane. Logan Spath has been spat around, and unfortunately for him, drops to now third to last of the running GT3s.
Yeah, just an unfortunate little incident there for Logan Spath, but yeah, we're seeing the replay of it here, and it's just, again, you get a little bit spooked by the LMDH coming through. I think he was looking in his mirror just to see whether the LMDH was going to try and make a move, gets in a little bit too deep, and just the rear end comes around on him.
And so see how easy it is to have that rear end step away from you. We've talked on occasion about weather conditions. It's coming down, though. That's the good thing. 33 degrees Celsius. As Sean Campbell jumps into the YouTube chat with some typos, to be fair, but he is out there racing. I don't know why this is happening. I think this is what he's trying to say happening, but happening's a bit funnier.
I think that we should go with his typos verbatim, personally.
Okay, so we have to somehow say dunno without one of the N's, because it's D-U-N-O with just one N. Oh, I see. There's a space between I and S where it was meant to be is, and so I don't know why this is. He's still there's plenty of typos across the board there, but it's not fair that Sean Campbell is capable of driving so quickly, heading down to pit lane, typing on his keyboard, all while not being a little bit distracted by that internet issue.
Yeah, it's actually incredible how good a driver Sean Campbell is in these GT3 cars, but hopefully he'll be able to actually finish this race, and his internet connection will allow him to do so. Meanwhile, it looks like Ryan Otis and Miguel Vigo going one lap longer than Campbell and Chin.
Yeah, Chin was fighting with Vigo, which is good for him come the start of the pit stop cycle. We'll see maybe an undercut for him. I've decided what we can do to BOP Sean Campbell, by the way.
He just has to type out a given passage every lap.
That's not bad, but I've just... no, we'll park him for today. That's what I was thinking. It's unsafe, his internet. It's not, but, I mean, we'll claim it is.
I mean, it would certainly close up the championship, but I think that my solution would produce a lot more entertainment.
Yours is a little bit fairer as well, to be, to be honest. But I do everything that I do for the fans who want to see Sean Campbell potentially be challenged just a little bit more than he seems to be doing right now. That's Jimbo.
One line of the Declaration of Independence per lap.
One line of the iRacing Sporting Code per lap. How about that?
That would require someone to have actually read the iRacing Sporting Code.
Will Vinson's done a stream where he's read the entirety of the iRacing Sporting Code in a stream. Highly recommend. Jimbo Pfeiffer got spooked by the LMDH car before they even got towards the apex of turn 15.
Yeah, very similar to what we saw with Pfaff, the same way. And it's really easy to do through that complex. The car is just so unsettled, particularly in the GT3, because you're going at such a low speed. So as we see, it can easily happen.
This is where I think we're hopefully going to see a bit of strategy play itself out. We got Miguel Vigo, we got Joshua Chin. One has pitted, one yet to box. Miguel Vigo going to stay out there for one lap longer, as will Ryan Otis, I do believe, and so, or rather, not yet coming down on towards the pit lane for either of them. But we were told 17 laps as the fuel window, so they've clearly been thinking about fuel mileage. Remember, Ryan Otis has never had any draft. It's Miguel Vigo that was sat behind the 95 in the early stages of the race.
Yes, that's true. As we saw some LMDH action as they tried to get their way past Miguel Vigo there. That whole battle is still going on for that 10th, or 9th, 10th, and 11th position there. But yeah, it's interesting to watch some of the strategy into the GT3. We know that Ryan Otis definitely is one of the drivers who likes to go as long as possible and get as short a final stint as he can. And I think that that's what he's sort of doing here. He knows he can't quite keep up with Sean Campbell, so he's trying to do it through strategy. And hey, if the internet gods help him a little bit, then he'll probably take it.
He needs the internet and iRacing gods to smile on him today. Here's Tyler Graf, Badefer, gonna likely launch it up the inside, down the back straightaway, jinx back and forth, and for a second I thought they were gonna come to blows, but two experienced drivers able to sort it out. And even though Badefer slides on deep, back up to 8th in his recovery after a drive-through penalty dropped him back through the field. Onto lap 21, only a couple of laps away from seeing these drivers off towards pit lane. Important that he now builds a bit of a buffer and hopes to try and enjoy some sort of an advantage on the other side of pit stops. Something I think Graham Saunders will be hoping for as well. 8 seconds now clear of Phil Kraus for second.
Yeah, Saunders has been sort of a league of his own this race, which is a little bit surprising given that, like, yes, he was able to pull off some really good laps in qualifying, but in practice it looked like the top of the field was pretty close together. But Saunders has just been able to sort of walk away here, and he's looked really, really comfortable all race long. He hasn't been even creating too much chaos with these GT3 drivers. He's been really responsible with his movements so far, so definitely a really strong race for Graham Saunders there.
Previous race winner, let's not forget, but very different sort of a track, Hockenheim, compared to the Circuit of the Americas. Pit stops underway for Ryan Otis, for Miguel Vigo. This is what we sort of expected now. Again, going to be very curious. Joshua Chin, where does he fare in comparison to these drivers? Of course, already off and away. Miguel Vigo has a long way to go. There is the Hydra Race Geodesic racing car finally up and away. Joshua Chin will take third spot away from the number 66 car. And look how the margins have somewhat grown inside of that top 6 GT3 class, because you've got a good 25 seconds. That now splits them.
Yeah, the margins... The margins are definitely doing some interesting things, and the big thing for me, though, was Chin getting around Miguel Vigo there. That's a big thing through that cycle for Josh Chin, so that tells me that maybe going long isn't necessarily the best thing. These GT3 drivers, the tires really do seem to be falling off at the end of the stint.
Do you wonder if maybe Josh Chin as well has slightly short-filled once again? 22 seconds was his pit stop, and in fact, let's show you that in a little bit more detail on the left-hand side of your screen. You'll see the last pit stop times for the various drivers and how there is a bit of a discrepancy here, given that some drivers have gone beyond the top of 1 hour left in this race. It gives them a little bit more of a window with which to play with, a shorter pit stop now or a shorter pit stop in about 30 minutes time. Campbell, Otis, Chin all electing for about 22 seconds. Miguel Vigo 25.5. Christopher Hill 28.5. Let's see how short a stop he'll have come the end of this race.
Yeah, it's very interesting to watch all these different strategies here, because there's just so many ways that you can get around a 90-minute race here. Speaking of strategies, we were talking a little bit earlier about Caleb Bensi doing a weird two-stop strategy. Well, that hasn't worked out as well as he would have hoped. He and Eric Staropoli got together as Staropoli was trying to go into the pits at the same time that Bensi was trying to pass him, and Staropoli then got a penalty and has since left the server. So Bensi lost about 20 seconds there, so that strategy call definitely did not play out for him.
I did think I saw Staropoli having an issue. See if we can grab a look at that in a few moments' time. Some big margins, although Josh Chin now just 3 seconds away from Ryan Otis. I did say I think this fight for second is going to be one to watch in GT3 in the championship, and it might end up being the fight for second on track as well over the course of this season, as Sean Campbell gets his chance at a BMW M4 driving experience courtesy of the BMW Performance School at the start, or I guess first quarter of 2024, and our championship has wrapped up. Here's a look at what happened to Staropoli. I do believe this is this after what happened?
So I believe this was in response to getting the penalty. He just decided to stop, but it was coming into his pit stop the lap previous that he and Bensi made contact.
That's what the timing screen picked up there. See if we can pick up what happened with Caleb Bensi as well as he tried to funnel his way on through. I guess there comes the team race for his car. Andrew, what are we going to see?
Yeah, so it just looks like a little bit of a miscommunication there. Staropoli didn't see Bensi coming through and decided to go into the pit lane that time by, couldn't make it around, and Bensi was there.
It's so difficult at times to play the fine lines, and so Staropoli comes out on the wrong side there, gets adjudicated the penalty, and after starting relatively down the order, overall combined GT3 field 12th, not going to see the checkered flag here today after, I think, being involved in everything that went on at Watkins Glen. Of note, by the way, Andrew, we are almost halfway into this race. We're still yet to really see a GTP car come down onto pit lane for a regular expected pit stop.
But I would suspect that we'll be seeing them fairly soon here. We're looking at lap 23 or lap 24 for most of these drivers. So basically, I think that they're all just trying to hold out to that 45-minute mark, and then once it crosses 45 minutes, you'll see every single LMDH car basically come down in a parade.
It's 11 seconds, the margin at the front, looking good for Sanders to grab 2 in a row, or rather not 2 in a row, 2 this season, and get himself back into a championship conversation. Drop rounds, of course, will be a factor, and so even if you start the season off with a couple of missteps, it's not impossible to bring yourself back into contention. Matt Taylor's going to head down to pit lane, though, right around as we head to the halfway mark.
Maybe one lap early for Matt Taylor, but I think that he just really wanted to get off of those tires. And, of course, he was in that battle with Tyler Graff and everyone else. Baliokas was, I believe, in there as well at a certain point in time. So maybe just getting in a little bit of clean air will help him on this as he tries to do a little bit of an undercut here.
Yeah, keep an eye on him. Also keep an eye on Flynn Lazier. We mentioned that he was, 4 seconds back from Austin Young a couple of laps ago. That's probably, a good 20 minutes ago at this point, given how this race has flown on past. And I think we're about to see them jink left and head to pit lane because Sanders, Kraus have already made their entries to the box. Austin Young is going to go. No, he's not. There he comes onto pit lane as well, just trying to watch on the timing screen. Flynn Lazier, though, has done a great job of closing that margin up to the championship leader as almost on cue. I think the entirety of the LMDH field would ascend on pit lane.
Yeah, I almost wonder if Young was a little bit close on the fuel there. Oh, as Flynn doesn't quite get into his box cleanly there. That's going to cost him about a half a second there, unfortunately. But yeah, Young was really slow on his pit entry lap there. So maybe just nursing every last bit of that fuel to get past that 45-minute barrier.
Look at these longer stops, by the way, for the likes of Sanders, 43.2 seconds. Larger fuel tank capacity and therefore more time to fill it. The fuel fill rate did not necessarily increase as well, and so it's going to still be a rather large margin. Phil Kraus will head off net second with likely Austin Young able to gain a half a tenth or so, half a second on Flynn Lazier potentially after sliding through the box, and we'll get a good marker at the end of this first sector as they bring their tires up to temperature as well. They're all basically right around 43 seconds in the box, and so I guess we've got a new standard to expect here. Moving forward, big changes for the drivers, slight changes for us to get a grip on how the strategy is going to play out, Andrew.
And one of the things it does mean is that it's basically going to be automatic for these drivers to take tires as well, Arjuna, because with the tanks to take that long to fill, you'd be a fool not to take all 4 fresh tires now.
Pit entry, Andrew. Rate this on a difficulty 0 out of 10.
It's, I would say, probably about a 6. The big thing is just don't overdrive it. And then, as you saw with Staropoli, well, there's a little bit of overdriving from Tyler Graf as I say that, but I would say, like, the hard part is that you have to brake so much earlier than you do normally for the corner. So, and just getting off the previous corner, it's a very short runway to get into that pit entry. But once you're actually in the lane and slowed down, it's not necessarily the hardest pit entry.
Absolutely. Poor Tyler Graf as well, at his expense, showing off how easy it can be to make mistakes. Now, O'Brien and Valiokas make their way down onto the lane. Now they go an additional lap beyond the rest of the field. See how it fares them out to the likes. Maybe not of Alex Guyon, but maybe Betafer, maybe David Sirois. Just keep an eye on them. Haven't been talking too much about GT3s, unfortunately, and that's because, well, some have been having a difficult day. Craig Forsyth seems to be the most recent one, not enjoying his trip to the Lone Star State.
No, Forsyth has definitely been struggling here today. He wasn't necessarily the fastest, or as fast as he has previously been in qualifying. Fairly far back on the grid, and then it just hasn't been a good day here. And I feel for him because COTA isn't one of my favorite tracks either.
Yes, you made that clear at the top. Don't worry, there's at least one sane person here who likes the Circuit of the Americas in the commentary booth. Michael O'Brien out in 7th spot, a good 4 seconds back from Caleb Bensi, but importantly 10 seconds in front of Razmas, who did a short stop for not sure what's going on there. Half the time that we'd expect for Mike Razmas. We'll keep you appraised of what goes on in his car, but expect him to head down to the pit lane one more time. Flurry, excuse me, of replay, starting with Creighton Carter, who spins himself around in through that triple right-hander. Not the first driver to make that mistake, not the last, but look how close it was with Michael O'Brien.
Yeah, that's not the place that you want to see a car just sitting in front of you if you're Michael O'Brien. You have to be so committed to that triple right-hand apex, and then suddenly there's a car just in your path and you're not exactly sure where it's going to go. Now we're looking at what happened with Craig Forsyth here, and it's kind of similar to what we saw a couple of times before, where you just get in a little bit too deep into that really tight corner of the stadium section, and around the rear it goes.
And fortunately, you have Andrew Marquez, who is behind you, who is heads up, aware of the situation, slows down in time, and doesn't cause more drama. But Michael O'Brien does. He goes around, and this time, after the pit stops, just when you got fresh tires as well, you're going to be feeling that pain for the rest of the 40 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say that was not the opportune time to try to torture your rear tires as O'Brien did there. And probably wisely choose to stay behind Chris Staples there through that section and not cook his rear tires anymore. But yeah, he's now going to have to be very cognizant of those rear tires, because at least for the next lap or two, the temps are going to be really, really high on them. One other note from that pit cycle, we saw Matt Taylor come down a lap early. Well, he came back down pit road again, and he is now 3 laps down, and I believe disconnected at this point.
I think you are right. Confirm him as our third retiree, Staropoli, in the GT3 class, along with one other LMDH, that Alexander Van der Sant, 37 started, still left with 34 out there and running here at the Buttkicker Grand Prix of the Circuit of the Americas. Sean Campbell continues to have internet worries, but no such worries at the front of the field. It's Graham Saunders that's looking good for a potential second victory of what's been a wild LMDH first 5 rounds of this Buttkicker Sportscar Series. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here in the Lone Star State with a run to the checkered flag with the Buttkicker Grand Prix of COTA. welcome back to RaceSpotTV and the Lone Star State. We made our way to the Circuit of the Americas, where today it's time for round 5 of the Buttkicker Sportscar Series, the Buttkicker Grand Prix of COTA. Hello everyone and welcome back to RaceSpotTV, to Arena TV, as we head our way into what's going to be a busy summer of multi-class madness. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, joined alongside, as always, by Andrew Kinsella. And don't forget, you can follow along with live timing and scoring by heading to racespot.tv/timing. Andrew, we are through the pit stop cycle, at least in the case of the LMDHs. GT3s still yet to make their final trip down pit lane, but 2 leaders asserting dominance at the front of each class.
Yes, absolutely. We have Graham Saunders 12 seconds in front of Phil Krause in the LMDH category, and then Sean Campbell massively in front as well. So a little bit of internet issues for the number 26 that we've seen throughout the day here, but he seems to just be continuing to chug along. Meanwhile, in the AM class, what can we say about Chase Wilson? He has just been putting on a clinic here for these amateurs.
Did come in a little bit early, as more on the lines of strategy with someone like Joshua Chin in this race, and so we should see him down on pit lane in probably not more than 4, maybe 5 laps, although he could come in as little as 2 or 3 if he truly wanted to. Josh Chin, at one point I was hoping and thinking it would be nice to see him close up on Ryan Otis in what would have been a potentially fun fight for second. Instead, I think he's looking a little bit more rearwards because Miguel Vigo, who will have slightly fresher tires, let's not forget, after pitting 2 laps later than the King of Chins, has managed to close up to within a second or so of the private label Team Hype car, and more importantly, into drafting range.
And this is the strategy yo-yo that we've seen play out in a number of races so far this year. Is Josh will come in a little bit early and then he'll have to pay the piper at some point. The question is, will Miguel Vigo be able to pounce here? Because we know that Chin, more than anyone else, he can take care of the car, he can take care of the tires, and he can take care of the fuel. So it's always difficult to try to outfox Josh Chin on strategy.
I've done some endurance races against Josh Chin where he's gone 3 or 4 laps longer than the rest of the field. Now, to be fair, he's not always necessarily as fast lap by lap as other drivers, but when he's got a fuel number to hit, a fuel number he will hit is probably the best way of putting it. It has one of the lightest right foots that you can probably find. And again, that's a private label Team Hype BMW M4 that pays tribute to some of the lineage of team owners and their history racing BMWs, so it's always good to see that when Chin is not in a purple BMW, that it's at least for a good reason. With that said, though, I don't know why at this point into the season, round 5, Marius Valiokas has raced every round under the Race Clutch banner, but still is yet to get a Race Clutch paint onto his car.
We keep on being promised the next round for Valiokas, and it keeps on not happening. So I'm just going to assume at this point that it's never going to happen, and then it'll be on their next race.
It's not a bad idea, is it? Unfortunately, I choose a different approach. Is what I've realized is call them out, especially when we're silly commentators who need every little bit of help that we can get. The Race Clutch is red and black. I don't think we've got any other red and black cars in the LMDH field, so, you know, it'd be distinctive. You wouldn't miss it.
Exactly, yeah. As you say, we can use every last bit of help we can get when it comes to identifying cars on the fly. So, yeah, it would definitely be nice to have a typical Race Clutch livery for Valiokas.
Sweeps through in now 5th position. Let's not forget, has gained 9 spots so far. I don't think he's going to get close enough to Flynn Lazier, who is another 7.5 seconds further forward, but good drive up into the top 5. At least brings himself back into the picture in the championship. Side by side for 3rd. Chin and Vigo, and it's Vigo that's up on the inside as they rise up in towards turn number 1. Chin will try and swap it back potentially, but Vigo with better grip doesn't even give Chin the chance. It's Hydra Race Geodesic to third.
And I think that really goes to show just how much the tires do fall off on the GT3 cars. The LMDHs, the tires seem to hold on fairly okay right up until about the end of the stint, but these GT3s, you can definitely tell that just a couple of laps makes a big difference in terms of the fall off. The question will be, can Josh Chin stay in the draft of the 66 of Miguel Vigo and potentially use another undercut to get even more of an advantage next time? What will happen with the strategy? Because I think that we should be seeing Chin down pit lane probably within the next 5 minutes or so.
I figured out the reason why Josh Chin is so quick, by the way. Do you want me to break out some expert analysis here, Andrew?
Okay, let's hear this expert analysis.
I'm going to shock you here. I'll break out the yellow pen tool as well. So there's something very important on the screen that you'll see. It's up here in the big rear view mirror. It's this RaceSpotTV logo. I'll point your attention to it here. It's been proven scientifically to add at least 50 horsepower to your car, if not remove also 10 kilograms off the weight of your car, and so therefore it adds up to at least a tenth or two per lap, and so that's the secret that Joshua Chin is truly channeling.
Well, so that's true of the RaceSpot logo being on
it applies everywhere.
Itself. So it applies to the driver as well.
It's making Chin a smarter and faster driver, you see?
Gotcha, I see. Okay, it raises his IQ by 10 points.
We need to come up... RQ, race... No, that doesn't work very well. We're going to workshop a term for something that describes someone's racecraft. I have a lot of suggestions. A lot of them not broadcastable is the problem.
Yes.
Yes, okay, that's something for RaceSpot After Dark. So tune in on our alternative platforms. Andrew, alongside myself, Arjuna, will no longer be allowed on RaceSpot airwaves, and so we'll have to find a Twitter space somewhere that we can go and join. Chin already 1 full second back from Vigo, shows the importance of those tires, and I think Andrew's not wrong. See Chin down in the next handful of laps. I want to just give another shout out to Graham Saunders and the job that he is doing at the front. But by equal measure, let's give a shout out to Phil Krause, who is, coming to grips with a car that outside of this championship, I don't know how much we're going to see Phil racing in this car over the rest of 2023, especially given that the private label team hype is somewhat associated with another manufacturer that may not also now have somewhat of a representation inside of this class. So maybe there's another GTP car that we'll see him in, but he's figured it out pretty well.
No, he definitely has, and it's a testament to how when you put a top driver into a car, no matter what car it is, they will adapt to it and they will figure out how to go fast. And it's just been... What we've seen from both Saunders and Krause here today is not just speed, but also consistency. Lap after lap, they haven't been taking risks with the traffic, even though they very easily could. And they haven't been putting themselves in harm's way. They're just reeling off consistent lap after consistent lap here. Krause just hasn't quite been able to get to the same pace as Graham Saunders, but he's done an absolutely fabulous job of getting himself away from Saunders' teammate, Austin Young, sorry. So really good drive from both of them.
I got very concerned for a second that I was about to say that Chevy and Cadillac had a relation when they didn't, so I'm glad. I had to go back and Google. Yes, they are both part of General Motors. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm very excited for this weekend, Andrew. You know what is this weekend, right? No, what is this weekend? I have lost all track of what week we're on, so... I think that's not too uncommon. It's iRacing Watkins Glen 6 Hours week.
Oh, of course it's Watkins Glen this weekend.
And so it's going to be 6 hours of me shouting about prototypes.
Absolutely, and... Now, does the Watkins Glen, they do use the chicane for that,
do.
Right? So,
yes.
So not only will you be shouting about prototypes, you will also be shouting about prototypes going over bumps improperly.
To be honest, actually maybe not, because I'm of the opinion that if you want to survive the chicane, you just run a certain line that, yes, might be a little bit slower, but is not going to kill you.
Yeah, but these are racers,
I know,
Arjuna,
which is why I'm
at a certain point they are going to go for broke, and they're going to go over the chicane.
Absolutely, but can you imagine how interesting the YouTube chat is going to be?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Especially when the favorite driver is suddenly out of the race because the teammate went over the chicane wrong.
I'm just saying, I'm not wrong. At the car that wins is going to be the car that does not die at the bus stop.
In order to finish first you must finish.
Exactly, that's all I'm saying. Similar sort of sentiment for what the drivers are experiencing here, because George Anzaldo jumped in to tell us that Caleb Benzie sitting at 24 incidents, and the incident limits is 28. So if Caleb Benzie has one more 4x car contact, drive-through penalty is automatic. There's nothing race control will do to intervene.
Yep, it's a hard limit here in the Lionheart series, and then of course, hopefully we don't have to reach this point, but the DQ limit is 35x, so that's not that much beyond the 28x. So Benzie definitely does have to be careful over these next 25 minutes.
The lap's long enough that you could realistically pick up 3 incidents a lap just with off-tracks.
Oh, easily. I would say 4 or 5 if you're really not caring about track limits.
Well, is it long enough to let you do that with how the cooldown, the offset works?
Yes. So you have turn one. You have turn one. You have the last turn of the S's.
So 7 or whatever it is.
Turn 7. Then you have the exit of the hairpin at the end of the straightaway. Then you have the exit of the stadium section, and then you have the penultimate corner.
I'm just saying, I can appreciate why drivers ask for increased limits here. Jim Herrick is already up to 30, by the way, which means he has served a drive-through. And he's
I was also going to say, don't ask me how I know that you can get 5x in a lap.
From my experience, Andrew, that's what you'll say. Looking at my VRS data, that's what you'll claim.
Yes.
We are seeing increased pit stops. Miguel Vigo's not too far away from the drive-through limit of his own volition, so keep an eye out for him as he tries to push to hold on to 3rd spot. But I did know Craig Forsyth came on in. Christopher Hill in the 101 came off onto pit road as well. With 24 minutes to go, it's the likes of Josh Chin, 14 laps into his run, one of the shorter pit stop times that we'd expect to see into pit lane in the next couple of laps.
Yeah, I would definitely expect Chin, if not this time by the next time by, just simply to change up the strategy just that little bit. We're also noticing that because there's only about 20 minutes left to go, but the track temp has also gone down a significant amount as well. So that will also play into just how long the tires are able to hold on for this final stint. So I think that you'll see, if you come down a little bit early, you might actually be able to make those tires last the full stint.
Not seen Chin in just yet. Do want to give a shout out to both Alex Scuyon, who's got 0 incidents so far this race. Chase Wilson as well, leads in AM, has already made, I believe, his final pit. No, in fact, is still yet to make his final pit stop, but he's only got the 1 incident so far. Right on cue. Right on cue. Chase Wilson heads on to pit lane for the final time today.
So I wouldn't call that a curse because he definitely needed to come down pit lane, but what do you want to call that one, Arjuna?
Sometimes commentators know what they're talking about.
No, that's not true. We both know that's not true.
Somewhere Adam Blocker in France is shouting, saying that's not true. Arjuna never knows what he's talking about.
I'm not going to dispute it.
You were trying to make sure you didn't get further involved in that one. I respect your silence. 22 seconds for Chase Wilson as he's off and away. Looks like he'll grab another victory in this AM class, and more importantly, feeds out into some clean air so can get back up to his rhythm and hit his marks from this point forward. Just 22 minutes left to run. And again, 1 incident so far. I am very impressed.
Yeah, it takes a lot of patience and a lot of precision in order to get around this place with only 1 incident point. As we see a little bit of twitch on the cold tires there, you can tell riding on board of a car that's just out of the pits just how slow they have to go on until those tires really get up to temp. But Chase Wilson, he's done a really good, solid job here today, and We talked about it off the top. He needed a solid performance to get over the heartbreak that happened at Watkins Glen there.
A little bit tight on his entry into that corner, but gets off fairly tidily. Interestingly, it's Ryan Otis that is amongst the first to pit inside of the top 5, followed in by Joshua Chin, which is not unexpected for final services here. 21-ish minutes left on that clock, so it means Miguel Vigo now will once again have a slight overcut. And in terms of weather conditions, we're now down below 30 degrees. It's only getting better and better for those trying to make tires last a little bit longer.
Yeah, the cooler the track temp, the longer that the tires are going to stay in the right temperature window to work, and the less wear comes in. And is that an LMDH on pit lane there, Arjuna?
It was. I think that was Mike Rasmussen. It was.
So that's an interesting. I wonder if he had some kind of incident there, because I don't see him going up on the jacks here, so it could be an incident there for the 66, or maybe he just didn't get enough fuel in the last time that they went down.
He did have that very short stop that confused me, and so he comes back in for another 23 seconds, and Mike Rasmussen will head out just in front of some GT3 traffic, but along with Caleb Benzie, I think proving that the two-stop, not necessarily the fastest option, although kept them out of trouble, which I think for a race like this, Andrew, is not necessarily a bad thing.
I mean, it kept Rasmus out of trouble, but
True.
the trouble found Benzie anyways with that incident that he had with the GT3 car a little bit earlier. But yeah, it's hard to stay out of trouble at a place like COTA, to be honest. There's almost nowhere that you can hide out there.
I'm trying to think of places to hide. Tower. We'll get to it. Can just about see it there. I guess that's a hiding spot.
What they need is more trees so that you can hide behind the trees and not know that you're coming up on someone.
Was it 2021 or 2022 when the NASCAR Cup Series came here in apocalyptic rain, as that's a bit of a mistake there from Jim Herrick, just trying to get out of the way of the GTPs. I think it was 2021.
That sounds about right. And then wasn't it last year that the Craftsman Truck Series came back and they were in apocalyptic rain as well?
Yes, it was. That's why I remembered rain last year as well. Who was it that got completely blindsided? Was it Martin Truex, Kevin Harvick? One of the two. One of the experienced veterans that you'd be like, that they'll know how to survive all of this. And it's like, no, it was raining hard enough that, well, it was basically a lottery. It was literally a Texas Hold'em. Yeah,
it was more poker than racing at that point. And of course the spray is just insane in the rain around a track like this as well, particularly with how wide open it is. The spray, like when you're at a place like Road America or something, the spray sort of gets absorbed by the trees and the stuff around the track, but where there's no trees around the track, it just sort of hangs in the air for what seems like a lot longer than typical.
It was Martin Truex, Ted Lowendick, who was spotting for, I think, Valliokas and Campbell today, jumps in to confirm for us 2021. Taking a look at Miguel Vigo, by the way, in through to the final sector, 23 seconds off the back of your race leader, first and second. Yet, to head down to pit lane, although Sean Campbell rolls the WMP Racing number 26 on towards his pit box, seemingly with the technical issues not rearing its head too much for the time being.
You say that and it's going to start up again,
I
so
know.
You just cursed him, so if it starts up again, at least he has someone to blame now.
Miguel Vigo does stay out, though, and so he goes on to lap 16 of the run. Don't think we'll see him go much longer than maybe one more lap. What it does guarantee is I don't think Miguel Vigo is going to take tires.
Which will definitely be an interesting call. he does seem like he's able to hang on to these tires pretty well this stint. He's lapping within about half a second of his fastest lap times right now. So yeah, like, it could work. I'm just not sure if it would be necessary. Yeah, we'll see. It's always a roll of the dice with these GT3 strategies, because on the one hand, you want that shorter pit time, you want to be able to get out in front of your competitors, but then there can be so much fall off at the end of the stint.
The choice for the race to run into the evening hours, I think, is one that brings this strategy to be a little bit more viable. And we'll get a good sense of exactly how viable it is. Maybe not the end of this lap, maybe the end of next lap. We'll find out. What I do know is that Chase Wilson has just re-inherited the AM class lead. He's waiting for no one now to come down pit lane, so he should finish 7th in the combined GT3 class for another good solid haul of points, because Chris Staples, the next AM machine, is in 10th. We've got Malone in 13th, Reagan in 14th. Wilson yet again just running a solid race, and you mentioned the disappointment of Watkins Glen. Perfect way to bounce back at a difficult track.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a track where if you have the rhythm, you can really get around it, and that's what Chase Wilson has done here today. As we see your GT3 temporary leader, Miguel Vigo, down pit lane, and already Sean Campbell making his way by. But this is the driver that we're looking at here, Josh Chin versus Miguel Vigo. Last lap, Chin was about 2 or 3 tenths of a second quicker. He's got to let Phil Kraus by here. Will that slow him down just a little bit? It's going to be really tight here between Vigo and Chin.
Remember, Vigo does have a ways to go before he can release himself off of the limit.
12.7 seconds.
Where is Ryan Otis actually in this equation? Could he be closer to Miguel Vigo than I thought? In fact, yes, he will be, because Vigo comes out directly alongside with Ryan Otis, side by side, and with tires already up to temperature, but with a little bit more wear in them. Can Vigo hold on side by side down in towards the entry of the S's, with Phil Kraus wisely staying back and out of this? Vigo holds on to second, and boy, do we have a fight now.
We do have a fight, but that was probably not what Miguel Vigo was hoping for, paradoxically, Arjuna, because I do think that Otis is going to be able to get by Vigo, but the battle between them is actually going to probably cost him a little bit more time and allow Josh Chin maybe just that little bit of extra room and extra runway to get up to Miguel Vigo, because I don't think that Miguel Vigo is going to be able to hold off Ryan Otis here. See how long he will have a chance to hold on. Chin's a good 4 seconds back. 12.7 is 3/10 shorter for Vigo than it was for Campbell. And remember that Campbell's cut it quite close in terms of not taking tires either. So is the choice for Sean Campbell to not take tires a bit of a tick in confidence, a rising confidence, if you are Miguel Vigo, knowing, well, Sean's maybe in a similar spot to me and he thinks he can make it, maybe I can too. Yeah, I think the difference between Campbell and Vigo is that Campbell isn't really fighting with anyone. He just was purely going on time on pit lane and just padding his lead, because he still has 25 seconds now in front of these drivers in this battle here. But the trick for Vigo is that he's got to be able to fight with Ryan Otis and then Josh Chin as well. Chin did a 2:06.3 on the last lap. Compared that to Vigo's lap before he came in was a 2:06.8. So that's half a second a lap. That's a lot of time. But conversely, there's not a lot of time left in this race. Running out of laps, that is for sure. I will just point out that when it comes to the LMDH class, there really isn't too much going on there. You do have a couple of drivers trying to close, the likes of Sirois trying to close on Bensi, but not really much brewing there. Josh Ching lost out a whole bunch of time as a car tried to slide up his inside in through turn number 1. He's now 5 seconds off the back of this battle for second, where Vigo through the S's, despite maybe having tires that have
done 16, 17 plus laps on them. Looked like he had a really solid rhythm and grew the gap out to Ryan Otis in that Synergy Motorsports car, and might now get some drafting help down that back straightaway as well.
Yeah, there's going to be 2 LMDHs slotting in between the battle here, which should give Ryan Otis at least a little bit of a draft here, but not a lot. And then, of course, as they go around, it'll give Miguel Vigo that draft as well. So, well, probably about a wash. It all came out in the wash there in terms of that. But Josh Chin, you mentioned turn 1. He had a torrid last lap. Just in general, he was down in the 207s just with the traffic. So it was definitely a big blow to his chances in terms of getting held up by some of the traffic negotiating around him.
But having said that, 208.3 for Otis, not like he really fared too much better. So there's a little bit of a comfort for him in that one. It was Flynn Lazier who's in 4th and Barrett Rolfe in 13th who were going past earlier, pretty close together. The 2 prototype cars, one machine 1 lap down in the form of Barrett Rolfe, so they weren't really fighting over anything. It was the white and orange car of Lazier that's now 7 seconds off of the back of Austin Young, who sits on the final podium step. It's 1.5 seconds at the line. Otis lost a full half a second to Miguel Vigo. Is it the case that older tires might actually be faster? And is that going to be the case in 10 minutes' time when we're getting ready to see the checkered flag?
Yeah, we'll have to see, Arjuna. I think part of that was just where each of the drivers were caught in terms of traffic. Otis, as we know, is a very conscientious driver. So he really doesn't like to get in the way of the LMDH cars, and so I don't think that he was necessarily as aggressive as Miguel Vigo was in terms of his car placement, and maybe just trying to make sure that he wasn't holding up the LMDHs. I think that the real tell will be this lap, where there's not really any cars between the 3 of them that will hold any of them up. So let's see what happens at the end of this lap.
I see how it is. Only Ryan Otis is a conscientious driver. Miguel Vigo isn't.
I'm just saying that Miguel Vigo was being a little bit more aggressive than Ryan Otis has.
But to be fair to Miguel Vigo, he has a lot of experience in top split iRacing special event competition dealing with those prototypes, which is where in some ways he is maybe a better fit for the likes of Kraus, Young, Valiocus in terms of the way that they manage traffic. They have a similar expectation of what the GT3 cars will do as to what Miguel Vigo has as to what the LMDH cars are going to do. And so sometimes that is not necessarily a bad thing. Ryan Otis got spooked, as did I, by the GT3 car, a little bit wide off the exit of turn 15. But the gap at the line is going to be holding pretty steady, above 1.5 seconds, maybe closer to 2. This time at the line, where is Graham Sanders, you wonder? Well, he's just heading down the back straightaway. I think that means that we've probably got, coming up on 4 laps to go this time by.
Yeah, I would say 4 to go for sure. And it's just been a dominating performance from Saunders. He really hasn't been challenged this whole race, just basically out there vibing on his own, and sometimes you really need that type of race to turn around your season. Saunders, of course, did not have a very good first couple of races. He didn't finish inside the top 10 in either of them, then won at Hockenheim, had a little bit of some adventures at Watkins Glen, and then we're back here. So I think what this race can do for Saunders is just really, when you have a nice calm race like this, it's a huge confidence builder, number one, but it also gets you in that sort of consistent mindset where maybe he can sort of put the feast or famine sort of results that he's had so far this year to bed, and then really start to dial in a more consistent speed and consistent results, and then start to reel in his teammate for the championship lead.
Should be 4 laps for sure, I think, this time by. His only appearance in the top 10 is his win at the Hockenheim ring, and I'm just looking through the stats. Amongst the highest in terms of average incidents per race, not always his fault, again, because he's being involved in a fair few bits of contact here and there. The thing that shocks me the most, though, is that he's led 2 laps this season, and I say it a lot, usually when we're oval racing on a speedway, a super speedway. It doesn't matter how many laps you lead, Andrew, as long as you lead the last lap. Graham Sanders, case in point, at the Hockenheim rig led just 2 laps. Here he's on his way to leading almost every lap. What a difference in form book, I guess, and the way that it reflects in the results. But like you say, a turning point in the season. Same token for a second Hydra Race geodesic racing machine. Miguel Vigo started off the season on the wrong foot, starting to find his rhythm, starting to get into the groove. This second place result that looks like he might be able to hold on to it might propel him back up into the fight for second in GT3 Pro, first in GT3.5 Pro.
Yeah, and I gotta say, we probably sold Miguel Vigo a little bit short on his ability to keep the car under him, because he's not only has he solidified that second place, he's starting to walk off into the distance. Ryan Otis, that last lap did not have a good lap in terms of traffic, and he is now 3 seconds back. So Vigo's just done a great job keeping the tires underneath him. He knew that he could do this. Even when we didn't think that he could make the tires work, he's been putting in lap after lap in the 206, the mid 206s. So all credit goes to that number 66 driver.
Might get the chance to talk to Miguel Vigo at the end of this one. Wait and see. Don't forget that at the drop of the checkered flag, coverage does not end. Stick around for our extended post-race coverage, including a chat with the drivers, and I look forward to what's coming up next as we make our way over to Circuit de la Sarthe into the French countryside. It's not very famous, that track. What you might know about it is there's a KFC by the side of that long Mulsanne straightaway that hopefully we've got some pretty good camera angles from. Miguel Vigo is up to 24 incidents though, so if anyone bashes into him, he's serving a drive-through penalty. Logan Spath is at 27 incidents. 1 slip of the tire off the track, he's serving the drive-through. Someone else that's staring down the barrel of heading down to pit lane is Caleb Bensi. 26 incidents to his name.
And this is the point where you just got to sort of pick your battles and make sure that you get home without that drive-through penalty, because, man, it would be painful to get through all that time and then suddenly find yourself having to go down pit lane and ruin what was otherwise a great race. So right now, I think Bensi's fairly comfortable where he is. He's got David Sirwa maybe 2.5 seconds behind him. So there's not necessarily a lot of risk that you need to take if you're any of these drivers. The order's fairly spread out throughout the field. There's not a lot of battles going on right now.
So Bensi has 1 error allowed in terms of stepping off the bounds of the track to hit 27 incidents. It's 28 at which you will get the penalty, so he's got a little bit left to play with. I'd be curious what Joshua Chin has left to play with, because he's close to within 2.3 seconds. He's only going to have probably 2 laps left to try and mount a challenge on Ryan Otis, but given that they came into this round tied on points, and knowing that between the 95 and the 73, there's not going to be too much over the course of the season. If you're close enough to have a look, surely you've got to look for it.
Yeah, and you got to say, Arjuna, that the one area that the 95 of Ryan Otis has really had Josh Chin's number so far this year has been in qualifying, and I think that's the tail of the tape today as well, where Chin has found the right speed in the race, but it was a little too late to be able to catch Ryan Otis here.
90 minutes maybe sounds like a decent chunk of time to work with, but in a field as competitive as this, knowing that the first cycle through traffic is often the time where breakaways form and the gaps really grow, you're right, qualifying so important. And so for Otis, qualified second, yes, he's dropped back a position, but his track position at the start really set him up nicely for what was to follow after that, and gaps holding pretty constant at 3 seconds. They will get lapped, I'm pretty sure, by your race leader, who is about to come around to see the white flag. One final trip around the Circuit of the Americas, 3.4 miles left. It's been a dominant display for Graham Sanders. Just one more lap to seal the deal.
One more lap is all it takes for that number 100 to get one more win here this year, but it's just been a dominating performance. Kraus has started to get a little bit closer, but he's still 15 seconds back. No real threat for Graham Saunders at this point as he makes his way around Josh Chin. I think you're right, he should get by Ryan Otis as well, maybe even Miguel Vigo, although he might be a little bit far up the road at this point. But what more can you say about Saunders leading wire to wire here? He was never really under duress, never under threat from Phil Kraus, even though Kraus himself has done a great job here today. So you can only sit back and admire as we've got a little bit of an adventure for one of our amateur drivers here.
And that's Trevor Malone, who is going to drop down behind Jaeger Lehner, but not too many spots. What I will say about Graham Saunders grabbing yet another victory is the fact that it now means that in this LMDH class, only one win has not gone the way of Hydra Race Geodesic Racing. That the win, of course, that went to Phil Kraus over at Watkins Glen. Here's a look at what happened to Malone. It was a battle with Marquez and just door-to-door racing action, and, well, one car comes off the worst.
Yeah, Malone comes off worse there, but I don't know that you can necessarily say that that's Marquez's fault either, because he was about as far over to the left as you can go through that corner there. I think it was just one of those racing deals where two cars really just came into one through an area where it's ill-advised to go side by side for that long.
Sean Campbell will get an extra lap on a bunch of his competitors. The winning margin going to flatter Campbell overall, but what a dominant display it's been in both of our classes. It's been hero or zero, doom or gloom. If you're Graham Saunders, it's more hero stuff today. Wire to wire, Graham Saunders wins again in the Buttkicker Grand Prix of the Circuit of the Americas. A fantastic display of working through traffic and staying out of trouble and building an almost 13-second margin over Phil Kraus, who crossed the line to grab second in that LMDH class. Going to be a long wait as well for Austin Young, championship leader in the number 11, that continues what's been a fine start to the season. Then we'll wait for Flynn Lazier, and then Marius Valiokas +9, the biggest mover on the day to round out the top 5 in class. Meanwhile, in the GT3 Pro class, we've already seen Miguel Vigo, Ryan Otis, Joshua Chin cross the line second, third, and fourth. But as I mentioned, margin's going to be flattering to Sean Campbell, who will be one lap clear of the rest of the field as he gets set to take his 5th victory in as many races.
As we watch Sean Campbell come in through the stadium section here for the final time, Chase Wilson was able to cross the line 7th place overall in the GT3, but first in the amateur class. Chris Staples is second in your amateur class, 9th overall. They are the bread in the sandwich that is Matthew Morehart in between them. But here comes a dominant performance once again from Sean Campbell through the last few corners here.
We are going to have to figure out a BOP of some kind. His internet issues clearly not sufficient to derail the hype train. Weight ballast, one hand, 1 foot, maybe both at the same time. I think these are some of the combinations that you need to stop Sean Campbell from reaching HyperX victory lane, a place he is intimately familiar with here in Lionheart Racing Series competition. As Andrew mentioned, Chase Wilson back to his winning ways. 7th in the combined results of the GT3s, first AM, and more importantly, once again, there's space between him and the chasing amateur category. Grab a look at our Buttkicker race results after an eventful 48 laps, 90 minutes of racing action. 2 victories this season for Graham Saunders and only 2 top 10s, but enough to get him back up top in front of Phil Kraus and in front of Austin Young, the championship leader, who consolidates his margin at the front. Flynn Lazier returns with a 4th place run in the number 4 machine, with Marius Valiokas climbing up 9 positions to 5th in front of Michael O'Brien, and then John Baderfer recovering to 7th in front of Caleb Bensi and David Sear, while the final car scored on the leading lap. Mike Razmas 1 lap down in a handful of LMDH machines that really didn't show their true colors today, and I think we'll be looking forward to heading out to a full-out blast at Le Mans with Guyon, Graf, and Rolf 1 lap down. Taylor and Van der Zant DNFs on the day. In the GT3s, as mentioned, the margins maybe not looking as close as they truly were, but Sean Campbell did indeed dominate to yet another win in front of Miguel Vigo, who grabs a second place finish. He'll be delighted with that in the Hydro Race Geodesic Racing number 66. It matches his result at Spa, with Ryan Otis rounding out the podium. Josh Chin, Christopher Hill, rest of your top 5, with Carlos Villa in front of the first of the AMs, Chase Wilson. Matthew Morhart does recover up to 8th to bounce back for Synergy Motorsports in that team championship. Chris Staples, 2nd AM, 9th on the road. Callisto rounds out your top 10, while behind them it's going to be Marquez, Yeagulainer, Malone, Forsyth, and Paulson that make up the rest of the top 15, with Chris Reagan last technically. 1 lap down. Logan Spath does make it to the end, albeit just, in front of Jimbo Pfeiffer, Creighton Carter, and then Eliza Indraini. With just 2 more GT3s to come across the line, it was Jim Herrick and Eric Staropoli. Well, in the case of those two, not actually coming across the line. DNFs 22 stored the green flag. 2 DNFs in the class. And with that, we get ready to head into post-race coverage, into our Buttkicker post-race show. What a 90 minutes we had here in the Lone Star State, and winning the Buttkicker Grand Prix of the Circuit of the Americas was Graham Sanders, who's standing by for us in HyperX Victory Lane. Graham, it seems like you're either winning or you're binning this season. It started in qualifying, though. How are you feeling about this combo at a track that divides opinions?
You know, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't excited for this race at all. I'm not a big fan of COTA, especially in hot conditions, and that's what we had in all of our practice sessions that we did. It was like 105, 110 plus degrees, and it was horrible. The tires weren't lasting, but luckily the race was 20 degrees cooler, and it was much more enjoyable. So, yeah, that was a fun one.
Changes to the car, and you only had about a week to get used to it, but that's something that a lot of the top-level drivers have become somewhat accustomed to. What's changed in your mind? What have you had to tweak in your approach in the last 7 days?
You know, the only difference that I've noticed is the boost. The boost, it deploys at all times. Like whenever you're on the throttle, it's deploying, and it seems like the regen is a lot stronger as well. So we're not having to play with the boost as much and having to save as much, which I like. But honestly, last week I spent the whole week driving the Cadillac, and then Saturday, Sunday I had to start driving the BMW again and start practicing. So,
quick question: what are you driving this Saturday?
Cadillac.
Okay, there we go. Circuit de la Sarthe next. We head off to Le Mans. How excited are you about for that one, which is going to be a very different sort of race to anything we've had this season?
Well, I would be really excited, but I have some family in town, so I don't know if I'm going to make that race, which sucks because I've already got some pretty bad results aside from my 2 wins, but we'll see. I'll try my best to make it, but I can't guarantee it, unfortunately.
Sounds like you can put them in front of RaceSpotTV, put yourself in the rig, problem solved. But Graham, congratulations on another victory, and hopefully we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time.
Thanks, Sergio, I appreciate it.
We catch up with one winner. We catch up with a second winner, hopefully with internet good enough to chat with us. Sean Campbell, do we have a copy with you?
I think so, yeah.
So you said you were chatting with us in the YouTube chat, as you always do. Not too distracted, though, to grab another victory at the Circuit of the Americas, qualifying again, 6/10 clear. How much more time was there in that lap?
I'm not sure. It felt pretty good, but I just got new pedals. And I'm not saying that I'm not just getting used to them, but they definitely helped. They feel a lot better.
What new pedals do we have now, Sean?
The Ultimate Pluses. Okay,
and I did say this during the race. It seems unfair to give you less excuses to not be fast with. So what excuses do you have left?
Internet connection, I guess.
You're clearly not a racing driver because you didn't have a book of them ready to go. But I will ask Sean, one thing we chatted just before this race began is slight changes to this car, but fortunately not too many, at least compared to what the LMDH drivers have been dealing with. How did you find the balance of this car? How close did you get to the incident limit?
I probably got about halfway there, and it's not a limit, it's a target, right? But it feels more drivable, I want to say. Like, I tried the 991 with the changes, and it didn't feel like a death trap as much at high speed. It still was, but it was like you could actually drive it at high speed if you were safe.
Interesting. Well, looking forward to seeing what happens at Le Mans, and at some point we'll figure out a way to BOP you so that you don't win by a lap. Sean Campbell, victorious once again, 5 wins in a row. We'll make our way to Phil Kraus, who's standing by second in the LMDH class after being able to hold on through traffic. Phil, how are you feeling about the 90 minutes you spent here at the Circuit of the Americas?
I'm feeling kind of lonely, Arjuna. I didn't really see anyone past like lap 5 because Graham shot off into the distance and I was kind of able to keep a steady gap to Austin behind me, so I didn't really have many friends.
Well, at least you stayed out of drama this week, which is good because Watkins Glen had plenty of that. Phil, another good, solid performance for you, though, in this car. One thing that you mentioned to me before this race began was the fact that in this car, one of the changes for the positive that a lot of drivers have been talking about is that there's a little less caution and hesitancy on the brakes. Has that allowed you to attack the car a little bit more compared to its state going into that last round of the championship?
Yeah, to an extent, but I found myself locking up a lot more late corner when you're on the trail braking phase because I was having that extra bit of pressure compared to like how you would have been pre-update. But yeah, definitely early and mid-braking zone it was a lot easier, and I was just being a bit of a dum-dum probably on the late braking.
I think you said it best. There's some racing driver excuses for you, though. Moving forward, though, Le Mans up next. We've got a couple of classic tracks to close out this first half of the season. How are you feeling about what we've seen so far with this multi-class madness?
I definitely think Le Mans will be a bit calmer than races have been. I know this was probably calmer than the races before, especially with Watkins Glen before this, but there's so much room at Le Mans to avoid chaos, but then again, if we catch the GT field when they're going through the Porsche curves, it's going to be unavoidable. But hoping there will be a bit more strategy for the future rounds, because one stops where the LMDHs all pit on the same lap. Yeah, I mean, some people might like it, some people might not, but I'd like to see a bit more strategy in the class for sure. But yeah, looking forward to it, Arjuna.
Congratulations on second, Phil, and hopefully we'll chat with you in a couple of weeks' time.
Yep, cheers, Arjuna.
Phil Kraus, second after winning at Watkins Glen, and he says there's plenty of room to avoid at the Circuit de la Sarthe. I'll phrase that slightly differently to you, Andrew. There's plenty of room to go 3-4 wide and to cause even more drama.
Yeah, so somehow when you have almost 50 or 60 drivers on a track, no matter how big the track is, no matter how much room there is, there's always going to be a little bit of drama. And I've never seen a race at the Circuit de la Sarthe that doesn't have at least a few incidents and a little bit of drama happening. So can't wait to see what these drivers of the Lionheart Sports Car Series make of this circuit. But it's the classic circuit for these types of races, isn't it? It's the one that all the other tracks are sort of measured against. So can't wait to see what happens in a couple of weeks' time.
Oh, and we'll get the actual flyover this time with the tricolor. One thing that we missed out on during the Porsche Esports Super Cup was because we had a standing start, the timing of the flyover was a little bit different to what it would be with a rolling start, so that's going to be exciting. The compromise on setup is one that doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to a track like Le Mans. You need top-end speed down the Mulsanne. You also need downforce through those Porsche curves in particular, and so there's going to be an interesting dichotomy at play when we head racing in 2 weeks' time, same place, June 25th, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, live on RaceSpotTV, and of course then just 3 races left before we're done, Andrew, miraculously, with the first half of the season.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be almost I would say a sprint to the end with Fuji, Mosport, and Monza. Especially with Mosport and Monza, there's going to be 2 really, really fast, narrow tracks there to end this first half of the season. So there's going to be lots of excitement coming up here.
Going to be a lot of fun, so don't forget to stick with us here on RaceSpotTV for all the action in this Buttkicker Sports Car Championship. Before we say goodbye, though, it's time to thank those that make all of this possible, starting with HyperX. The Lionheart Racing Series is brought to you and powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. You're passionate about sim racing, but it always feels a little flat compared to the feeling of driving a real car. Now you can actually feel what it's like to drive a race car. Buttkicker haptic hardware and software are easy to install and let you feel every bump in the track, slip of your tire, and engine redline. The tactile feedback is so accurate and realistic, you'll be driving faster and having more fun than ever before. Visit thebuttkicker.com to learn more. If you think sim racing is thrilling, try getting behind the wheel of a real race car. The BMW M4 GT4 Experience at the BMW Performance Driving School in Thermal, California puts you in the cockpit of one of BMW's fastest cars, complete with roll cage and racing slicks. You'll get fitted with a racing suit, practice pit stops, and lap their tracks with pro instructors. Nothing virtual about their thrills. To book your M4 GT4 Experience, call or visit the links on screen. Next Level Racing is an industry-leading cockpit and motion simulator manufacturer devoted to creating the most immersive experience possible for the global sim racing community. Take your racing to the next level and visit nextlevelracing.com. Gomez Sim Industries are makers of high-end esports equipment and controls, precision-built using nothing but the best materials available today. Passion and handmade craftsmanship drive each made-to-order build, creating a driving experience like no other. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com. Arena is an all-new esports streaming experience driven by real-time interaction between gamers and their communities. Arena brings live broadcast fan engagement to the next level. Get involved and make a difference on arena.tv. And finally, graphics, from simple logos to full branding for your company. Virtual designs, deliveries raced by Indy 500 champions. Graphics offers the finest quality with a wide range of design services. Visit graphicsesports.com to learn more. And it's not just them, but so many more that make all of this possible. To learn more about the Lionheart Racing Series, its 3 competitions, or its partners, head to lionheartracingseries.com to learn more. Next time we are out in action, we will make our way to Le Mans. That does not mean that the action stops here on RaceSpotTV anytime soon. The Lionheart Retro Series rumbles later on in June as it makes its way over to the Brickyard for the second of its Triple Crowns, the Buttkicker Indy 250. For now, it's time to say goodbye. For Andrew Kinsella alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thank you for joining us here at the Circuit of the Americas. Everything's bigger in Texas. The margin of victory was big. It's Sean Campbell. It's Graham Saunders on top, leaving the Circuit of the Americas winners of the Buttkicker Grand Prix at COTA.